A golden glow crept across the western horizon as the sun dipped behind jagged peaks. Rowan Carter rode her motorcycle through an empty desert highway, the steady rumble of the engine matching the quiet rhythm of her thoughts. At 35, she was no ordinary drifter. Once a commander in an elite special forces unit, she'd led dangerous missions in the world's harshest war zones. Now, she sought peace on the open road, free from orders, bureaucracy, and the ghosts of soldiers lost. She wore a weathered leather jacket and scuffed boots, no address, no job, and no obligations. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of danger and quiet solace. She rarely thought about the past, but tonight, something stirred. The wind carried tension, and her instincts, sharp from years in covert combat, flared to life. She was on Route 66, a historic highway winding through barren landscapes and forgotten towns. As the sun dipped lower, she checked her mirror. 3 black SUVs trailed behind, distant but deliberate. At first, they could have been chance companions. But the spacing between them never changed. Every time Rowan adjusted her speed, they adjusted too. Lane changes. They mirrored her exactly. Too perfect. Too practiced. Her pulse quickened. One SUV blinked its headlights, once, a subtle signal. Her mind snapped to flashbacks, roadside ambushes in dusty Afghan alleys, convoy attacks in Eastern Europe. A single blink could mean, move in, or, target locked. She took a slow breath and glanced ahead, already calculating evasive options. This wasn't traffic. It was a tale. Who were they? What did they want? Rowan had spent years scrubbing herself from every system, vanishing into a biker's anonymous freedom. But somehow, her past had found her again, 3 shadowy SUVs pacing her like predators. Then came the voice. A crackling loudspeaker pierced the air. "Pull over to the side of the road immediately," barked a man with a heavy Mexican accent. His voice radiated command, used to obedience. Rowan's jaw clenched beneath her helmet. No way she was stopping. Not for this. Instead, she twisted the throttle. The engine roared as she shot forward. The voice sharpened. "Stop now, or we will make you stop." One SUV surged forward. The passenger window rolled down, and she spotted the glint of a rifle barrel. A warning shot cracked the sky. They weren't bluffing. Rowan's heart hammered. She was outnumbered and alone. Stopping meant death, or worse. Survival meant escape. That, at least, she knew how to do. Breathing steady, she gripped the handlebars tighter and pushed the throttle again. The speedometer climbed past 90 miles per hour. Desert wind howled around her. She focused not on the SUVs but the road shape, curves, slopes, exits. They would be her allies. Behind her, the first SUV swerved, speeding up. A muzzle flash flared. Another shot. Intimidation tactics. Rowan refused to flinch. "Come on," she muttered, banking left. The SUV on her right tried to box her in, nudging her toward the guardrail. The driver jerked the wheel, pushing hard. Rowan countered with a fake-out swerve, darting toward them, then sharply away. The driver overreacted, losing control. The SUV's tire hit sand and skidded off the asphalt, vanishing into a dusty ditch. Rowan didn't watch the crash. She had seconds. Another SUV screeched forward, trying to cut her off. She slammed her brakes, swerving wide. Her sudden move created a gap. She took it, twisting back onto the road and accelerating again. The second SUV overcorrected, clipped a rock, and flipped end over end into a ravine. One left. The third driver hesitated. Rowan caught a glimpse of his face, stone-cold uncertainty. The vehicle hung back, then slowed further, then vanished over the next hill. Gone. Rowan didn't slow down. She kept her speed high until the road was once again hers alone. Only the engine's rumble and the beat of her heart remained. Not a random attack. Not a mugging. This was organized. Coordinated. Armed. Cartel, she whispered. The story she'd heard, about powerful syndicates owning entire swaths of the borderlands, suddenly felt very real. She had just made enemies. Big ones. Several hours after the highway ambush, Rowan Carter entered Redstone Ridge. The desert town emerged like a ghost from the sand. Low buildings, weathered neon signs, and cracked roads that whispered of a better past. Once a vibrant pit stop along Route 66, Redstone Ridge now felt hollow. It was close to the Mexico border, just remote enough to be forgotten, just lawless enough to be targeted. She coasted down the main drag. No laughter spilled from doorways. No bikers tuned their engines curbside. Instead, shuttered storefronts, boarded-up windows, and lingering gazes met her like warnings. This wasn't just a town in decline. It was a town suffocating under something far darker. She parked her bike outside a place called Maggie's Roadhouse. Rumor had it, the place once served the best pie west of the Mississippi. Now, it looked abandoned in spirit, if not in function. Inside, the air was thick with silence. A flickering jukebox failed to fill the void. A handful of patrons sat in booths, sipping coffee like they were awaiting bad news. Rowan took a seat near the back and removed her helmet. Her dark hair tumbled out. Dust smudged her cheek. Her gaze was sharp, more wary soldier than weary traveler. She ordered coffee. Black. She didn't want comfort. She wanted answers. And soon, she noticed them. 3 older men sat in the corner. Faded patches adorned their jackets, symbols once worn proudly. Each carried the stance of men who'd served. Alert eyes. Quiet confidence. Soldiers. Or what was left of them. Rowan approached. "Mind if I sit?" The man farthest from her nodded. His brow was carved with years of worry. "Name's Ezekiel. Zeke Thompson." He gestured to the others. "That's Clay Mitchell, mechanic. And Jax Monroe. Used to be one hell of a shot." Jax barely nodded, his intent stare unreadable. "We were the Iron Vanguards," Zeke said, voice low. "Back when Iron Dan led the charge. We kept these roads safe. Delivered supplies. Fought back when things got ugly." Clay's eyes drifted toward the window. "Dan's gone. Group fell apart. No one left to fight for." "And then the cartel showed up," Jax finished. His tone wasn't dramatic, just certain. Rowan's jaw tightened. She told them, briefly, about the SUVs, the ambush, the rifles. As she spoke, the men exchanged grim nods. "Not surprised." "They're expanding," Zeke muttered, tapping the table. "Used to control the drugs. Now they control towns." Rowan glanced at the symbol on Zeke's chest. "You ever think of getting the Vanguards back together?" The question hung in the air. Clay gave a half-hearted chuckle. "We can barely protect ourselves now. Bills to pay. Kids to raise. Fighting's easier when you're young and angry." "I've seen war," Rowan replied, voice tight. "And I've seen cowards with power. If someone doesn't push back, they take everything." The conversation paused as a waitress passed their table. Rowan noticed her fearful glance. Across the room, a man at a booth stood, dropped bills, and left in a hurry. Rowan looked around. Everyone here was scared. Clay leaned in. "They're not just scared. They've lost hope." "There's a difference," Jax added. "Fear fades. This is surrender." Before Rowan could answer, the diner door burst open. 3 men walked in. They moved like trouble, tattoos half hidden beneath dark sleeves, cocky strides, and cold eyes. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. They took a booth near the door, watching the room like wolves waiting for someone to twitch. The entire diner shrank into silence. This wasn't rumor anymore. This was presence. Raw. Visible. Rowan stayed seated, sipping her coffee. Her eyes never left the reflection in the window. One wrong move would spark something no one here was ready for. Then, the door opened again. And the air froze. A man stepped in wearing a worn leather vest, with a slashed iron Vanguards patch. "Viper," Jax hissed. Rowan remembered the name. A Vanguard once. Until greed, fear, or both turned him. Now he worked for the cartel. Viper sauntered to Rowan's table. The men he came with rose behind him, flanking. "You're new," he said with a sneer. "But you've made a name real quick. Took out 2 of our SUVs. Not wise." Rowan met his stare. "Come. I'm not going anywhere. If you've got something to say, say it now." He leaned close, voice low. "Get out of Redstone Ridge. These roads are ours." Behind him, Jack stood halfway, eyes burning. Rowan gently placed a hand on Jax's shoulder. Then she stood, slowly, facing Viper. "If you want this town," she said, voice steel, "you'll have to fight for it." A moment passed. Everyone held their breath. Even the jukebox crackled into silence. Viper smirked. "Suit yourself." He turned and left. His men followed. Only when the door slammed did the tension loosen. Zeke, Jax, and Clay looked at Rowan with something new in their eyes, not fear. A spark of resolve. But Rowan knew better. One person couldn't fight a cartel. And the Iron Vanguards? They were just shadows of what they used to be. Still, maybe that was about to change. Rowan rode on through the dead of night, tension knotted in her spine as the desert whispered around her. She spotted a dimly lit gas station in the distance, Hudson's pit stop. One pump island, a rundown store, and a faint flickering light. It was nearly midnight. No one in their right mind would be operating this late, this far out. Yet here it stood. And worse, a black SUV was already there. She didn't need confirmation. Her instincts screamed trap. But her tank was near empty. If she didn't refuel, she'd be stranded. Vulnerable. So she played it cool. She pulled in, killed the engine, dismounted. No one at the counter. No voices inside. Just the silence of expectation. And 4 men emerged from the store. They moved with practiced purpose, predators circling a lone prey. The leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, walked with commanding presence. A mountain of a man flanked him, arms crossed, exuding quiet menace. The other 2 stayed close, eyes alert, one grinning like this was sport. She didn't flinch. But every part of her was ready. "You're Rowan Carter," Scarface said, accent thick with Mexican undertones. "Word spreads fast. You've caused quite a stir." "And you must be Carlos," she said flatly. He smiled without humor. "You've got 2 choices. Work with us. Or ride out tonight and never come back." Behind him, one of the others, Luis, tapped a pistol against her bike's gas tank. The big one, Hector, remained still. The last man, Enrique, lingered in the shadows, watching. Rowan kept her hands free, her voice casual. "I don't shake hands with men who point guns at me." Carlos's expression hardened. "You cost us vehicles. Maybe lives. So listen carefully. Choose wisely." She hesitated. Not because she was uncertain, but because she needed to draw them in. She slumped her shoulders slightly, feigning submission. "Fine," she said. "We can talk." Carlos stepped closer. Reached into his jacket. That was the moment. Rowan dropped low, rolled forward. She slammed her boot into Luis's knee. He crumpled. She seized the chance and smashed her palm into his nose. His weapon skidded away. Carlos swung at her, wild, enraged. She ducked, caught his wrist, and twisted. His knees buckled as he cursed in pain. Then Hector moved, massive, fast. He lunged with a blade. Rowan sidestepped and delivered a brutal kick to the back of his leg. The knife clattered to the ground. A second blow to the jaw dropped him. Enrique drew his pistol. Rowan dove behind a fuel pump. A shot rang out, hot and loud. Missed her by inches. She could feel the situation spiraling. Open air. Gas fumes. Bullets. One mistake could ignite the entire station. So she used it. She spotted a stack of fuel canisters nearby. Crawled, grabbed Luis's dropped pistol, aimed, and fired. One canister ruptured. Gasoline gushed out. Sparks danced. Then fire. Not massive, but enough. A sudden fireball lit up the dark. The men recoiled. Carlos yelled in Spanish, shouting to fall back. Luis scrambled to retrieve his weapon. Rowan, coughing in the smoke, fired back, pinning them down. The heat was climbing. She had seconds. Her bike was too exposed. Probably sabotaged. But their SUV, still running. Lights on. Keys inside. She ran. Carlos shouted, "Stop her!" Hector tried to block her path, but stumbled over burning debris. Rowan slammed past him, vaulted over the pump hose, dove into the driver's seat. Luis fired wildly. Bullets sparked against steel. Too late. She hit the gas. The SUV roared forward. Carlos staggered into her path, but Hector crashed into him, knocking them both off balance. Rowan didn't stop. She swerved, tires screeching, smoke in her mirrors. The black SUV barreled into the night, engines howling. Only after a mile did she breathe. Alive. Shaken. But not beaten. She watched in the mirror as the glow of fire faded. Her heart pounded, chest tight, but her grip on the wheel was steady. They'd failed. They'd underestimated her. They wouldn't make that mistake again. She kept going. The SUV her stolen chariot, the desert her shield. But retaliation would come. They wouldn't let her walk away a second time. Rowan didn't slow down until she reached a remote dirt road. She ditched the SUV in a gully, wiped it down, and covered it with a tattered tarp she found nearby. Then she hiked through the night, slipping past landmarks until Redstone Ridge came into view again. By morning, she was seated with the Iron Vanguards, Zeke, Clay, Jax, inside Maggie's roadhouse, which now had its windows boarded. They'd heard. And now, they were scared again. Not just for themselves. For their families. For their town. Rowan looked each of them in the eye. "This isn't about me," she said. "It's about all of us. The cartel has control because no one's pushed back. Until now." "You got lucky," Clay said, voice tight. "What happens next time?" "We don't wait for next time," she replied. "We prepare for it." A long silence. Then Zeke asked, "You think we can stop them?" "No," Rowan said. "I think we must." The cartel's message was loud and brutal. Across Redstone Ridge, former Iron Vanguards were targeted. Bikes vandalized. Homes threatened. Families stalked. A man named Grant, the Bullwalker, an old warhorse who once wore the Vanguard's patch with pride, was found dead. Slumped beside his torched motorcycle on a lonely dirt road. A cardboard sign rested on his chest, written in jagged letters. "Anyone who stands in our way ends like this." The message was received. Some Vanguards fled town. Others went silent. But a few grew colder, angrier. And one, Rowan, hardened. This wasn't just intimidation. It was war. And she'd fought wars before. Rowan moved quietly, reaching out to the remaining Vanguards. One by one. Whispered phone calls. Hidden rendezvous. She knew cartel eyes were everywhere, so she used burnophones, misdirection, and code words. It was like planning a covert op behind enemy lines, because it was. Many Vanguards were hesitant. Others were bitter. But most were tired of hiding. Tired of losing. By the third day they met. In secret. Maggie's roadhouse, after hours. Lights dimmed. Windows covered. A circle of chairs formed in the back room. Zeke and Clay arrived first. Then Jax. Then others, some old, some new. One wore a patched-up vest with the Iron Vanguard's logo barely visible beneath duct tape. Others wore no symbols at all. They sat in silence. Until Rowan stood. "I'm not Iron Dan," she said, voice steady. "But I know war. And that's what this is. El Fuego isn't just pushing drugs. He's burning down homes. Killing our people. We can't let that continue." She laid out the plan. Reform the Vanguards. Operate like a militia. Share intel. Protect the town. Otherwise, she said, they'll pick us off one at a time. Just like they did to Grant. Whispers rippled. Some nodded. Others still hesitated. "Why should we follow you?" one man asked. Rowan didn't blink. "Because I fight. I don't run. And because I've already cost them more in 1 week than this whole town has in years." Jack stood. "She's right. I've lost a friend. I'm not losing anyone else. If Rowan leads, I'm in." Clay hesitated, then lifted his chin. "Me too." Finally, Zeke raised a hand. "Let's vote." One by one, hands rose. A new leader was chosen. Rowan Carter, commander of the reborn Iron Vanguards. The following days were a blur of preparation. Rowan coordinated equipment runs. Jax built sniper nests on the canyon ridges. Clay modified shotguns and close-quarters weapons. Logan Walker, a stoic demolition expert, rigged perimeter defenses. And Rafael Ortega, their tech specialist, studied cartel routines through intercepted chatter. The goal? Strike a blow that would shatter the cartel's grip and give the FBI something to use. That's when Agent Veronica Diaz returned. They met in a desolate picnic area, far from town. She arrived in a dusty government sedan. Clean blazer, sharp eyes, and a folder of evidence. El Fuego is more than a trafficker, Diaz told her. He's laundering through fuel depots, fake trucking businesses, and even grocery shipments. We've been gathering data, but we need physical proof. Rowan flipped through the folder. Photos. Maps. One name stood out. Moreno Fuel Depot. That's their hub, Diaz said. We believe records, money routes, even kill orders are stored there. But every official raid attempt has failed. Someone always tips them off. Rowan closed the folder. Then we don't raid it officially. Diaz raised an eyebrow. You're proposing a vigilante operation? I'm proposing results, Rowan snapped. You want evidence. I want justice. We do this together. Diaz hesitated, then handed her a USB. Building schematics. Guard rotations. Camera blind spots. No official support, but we'll move once you've struck. We need those files. Rowan nodded. Then we burn the depot to the ground. Midnight. 2 nights later. The Vanguards gathered outside the depot, silent shadows under moonlight. They were no longer scared men with rusting bikes. They were soldiers. Jax and his snipers took position along the ridgeline. Logan and Rafael set charges at the base of fuel tanks. Rowan and a small team crept toward the administrative building, the nerve center. At exactly 12:10 a.m., an explosion lit the gate. A car detonated. Diversion. Guards scrambled. Rowan and Rafael breached the fence's southwest side. One guard spotted them. Rowan dropped him with a single blow. They moved fast. Inside the admin building, fluorescent lights flickered. 2 guards. Rowan and Rafael took them down with silenced shots. No time to celebrate. An alarm blared overhead. Damn it, Rafael hissed. They tripped the internal sensors. Download whatever you can, Rowan ordered. We've got 3 minutes tops. In the server room, Rafael plugged in the USB. Directories flashed across the screen. Names, wire transfers, coded transactions. It was gold. 60%. 70%. Almost there, he said. Outside, gunfire. The guards were catching on. Rowan barricaded the door with a steel rod. Done. Rafael shouted. They bolted out the rear. Flames erupted from the tanks as Logan triggered the charges. The depot lit up like a sun. More explosions followed, dominoes of destruction. Rowan raced through smoke, bullets whizzing past. She dove through a broken fence, rolled, and sprinted toward the getaway bikes. The others followed. They vanished into the night as the depot crumbled behind them. On a distant hill, Agent Diaz watched the inferno. "This," she whispered, "is the break we've waited for." She reached for her phone. Rowan had delivered. Now it was the FBI's turn. Weaker souls had signed protection contracts under duress. Threats. Violence. Intimidation. The cartel offered locals a false sense of safety, for a price. The ones who resisted, they disappeared. Especially former members of the Iron Vanguards. Rowan had heard the rumors. Now, they were trying the same approach with her. But Rowan Carter didn't make deals with men who pointed guns. "Sorry," she said, voice cold with sarcasm, "I'm not much for contracts signed under a barrel." Carlos's face, half-shadowed by the station lights, tightened. His scar twitched as his jaw clenched. "We know what you did on the highway," he said. "You cost us 2 vehicles, maybe men." Rowan's gaze didn't flinch. Carlos stepped closer. "I admire courage. But don't mistake it for strength. You're alone. A slow smile touched her lips. That's your first mistake. Before Carlos could react, a shot rang out, cracking through the silence like lightning. From the darkness behind the station, a figure stepped forward, Jax Monroe, rifle raised. Next one goes between your eyes. Carlos flinched, taking a half-step back. The cartel goons turned, drawing weapons, but they were suddenly surrounded. From behind the station pumps, from the back alley, even from the diner across the street, dozens of shadows emerged. The Iron Vanguards. Armed. Ready. Wearing old patches or new makeshift armbands. Silent. Resolved. Carlos scanned the crowd. You think this is war? Rowan stepped beside him. It is now. The cartel men hesitated. Numbers mattered. They were outgunned. Carlos raised his hands slowly. This isn't over. No, Rowan agreed, but it's your turn to run. He backed away, his men following, their bravado crumbling with every step. When the SUVs finally pulled out, tires squealing, the silence that followed wasn't fearful. It was hopeful. In the weeks that followed, Rowan and the reborn Vanguards transformed Redstone Ridge from a ghost town into a stronghold. Checkpoints were set up. Safe houses established. Locals, once silent, now left food for patrols. Mechanic shops offered fuel for free. The town, though scarred, was healing. But with every day of peace, Rowan knew something was building. El Fuego, the cartel's brutal leader, hadn't responded yet. That silence was ominous. Until it broke. It began with the bombing of a roadside diner in a neighboring town. 3 bikers killed. Then a Vanguard safehouse was hit, nearly killing Zeke. Clay's garage was torched. Warnings were scrawled in blood on walls. And then came the message. Delivered in a shoebox. Inside, a single item. Rowan's old military ID, burned, bent, and a bullet. That night, Rowan stood in the Vanguard's war room, surrounded by maps and photographs. Her voice was low, steady. They're baiting us. Drawing us into the open. We should strike now, Jack said. Hit their convoy, make a statement. No, Rowan replied. They want to fight. But they want it on their terms. What's your play? Clay asked. Rowan pointed to the map. Rattlesnake Gorge. They're funneling supplies through that route. It's their artery. We cut it. We cut off their reach. Zeke frowned. It's a death trap. One road in, cliffs on both sides. Exactly, Rowan said. They think we won't risk it. She looked around the room. But I've risked worse. The plan was dangerous. A high-speed ambush in the narrow gorge. But it was their chance. They moved at dawn. The convoy was 3 trucks and 2 SUVs. Heavily armed. Rowan and the Vanguard set charges along the cliff edge. Snipers positioned above. Clay, Jax, and Rowan would ride in, acting like rogue bikers attacking solo. The trap was perfect. Until it wasn't. As Rowan accelerated toward the lead truck, the entire gorge exploded, not from their charges, but from mines planted by the cartel. El Fuego had predicted their move. The cliff collapsed behind them, trapping Rowan and her riders inside the gorge with the convoy. Gunfire erupted. The Vanguards above returned fire, but they were pinned. Rowan dove off her bike just before it was riddled with bullets. She crawled behind a boulder, her radio crackling. Jack's status. Pinned on the ridge. They knew, Rowan, they knew. She gritted her teeth, blood on her sleeve. Hold the ridge. I'll finish it. Through the dust, she saw him. El Fuego. Stepping from the SUV like a general in a tailored jacket. Tall. Calm. Wearing mirrored sunglasses and a gold-plated pistol. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His men opened fire again. Rowan ran. She weaved through cover, drawing them away. One by one, she picked off the flank. A pistol here. A knife there. She moved like shadow, fluid and lethal. Then, face to face. El Fuego stood alone by the last truck. His pistol raised. I've heard about you, he said in clean English. You think you're justice. No, Rowan replied. I'm consequence. She fired. He ducked, returned fire. The bullets grazed her shoulder. She tackled him. They fought brutally, fists, elbows, blood. Finally, she pinned him, his own pistol to his throat. "You don't get to walk away," she said. "But neither do you," he rasped. She glanced up. A final convoy truck, loaded with explosives, was armed. El Fuego smiled. "We both die today." Rowan growled. "No." She pulled him between herself and the truck, grabbed his radio and shouted, "Now!" From above, a Vanguard sniper, Jax, fired a single, perfect shot. It hit the truck's detonator, but not before Rowan dove behind cover. The explosion was blinding. When the smoke cleared, El Fuego's body lay motionless. Rowan staggered to her feet. Alive. Back in Redstone Ridge, days later, Rowan stood before the townspeople. The war was over, but the fight for peace had just begun. She looked out over the crowd, bikers, families, soldiers, and raised the restitched Iron Vanguards patch. "We protect our own. Always." Cheers erupted. The cartel was gone. The town was free. And the legend of Rowan Carter, the biker, the warrior, the commander, had only just begun. Staying any longer meant death. Rowan knew it the moment the truck's engine started ticking. Her bike was too exposed, probably already sabotaged. But the black SUV, the one the cartel had arrived in, was still idling, engine humming, doors unlocked. Time to improvise, she told herself. She sprinted through the swirling smoke, the glow of flames lighting her path. Behind her, Carlos yelled, "Stop her! She's getting away!" Hector lunged toward her, massive, quick, but stumbled when a flaming panel crashed near his feet. Rowan darted past, boots skidding on gravel, as gunfire cracked behind her. She didn't stop. She yanked the SUV door open and dove in. Hands shaking but precise, she jammed the gear into drive. Rubber screamed. The SUV tore forward. The force threw her back into the seat. She spotted Enrique in the mirror raising his rifle, but it was too late. A hard turn, a screech, and she was gone, roaring into the dark canyon. Dust and adrenaline filled her lungs. Her pulse was thunder. Back in the gorge, the remaining cartel men screamed in chaos. Some ran. Some dragged injured allies from the rubble. None followed her. She didn't stop until the highway leveled out into open plains. Only then did she breathe. The sun rose slow and angry, bleeding across the desert horizon. Rowan abandoned the SUV in a dry wash 5 miles from Redstone Ridge. She wiped it down, stripped it of anything useful, and walked the rest of the way. When she stepped through the battered front door of Maggie's Roadhouse that morning, silence greeted her. Not fear, respect. The Vanguards had watched the canyon light up from miles away. They'd seen the smoke, heard the reports. Now, they waited to see if their leader had returned. And she had. Bruised, burned, bleeding, but unbowed. Zeke handed her a black coffee. "We heard what happened." Jax added, "El Fuego." "Dead," Rowan said simply. "No head of the snake left." Clay let out a slow exhale. Then, "It's over." Rowan shook her head. "It's quieter now. But not over. We held the line. But there'll be others." Zeke raised his mug. "Then we'll keep holding it." A cheer rose among them. Not loud, but full of conviction. The Iron Vanguards had been forged in war, reforged in fire. Now they were more than a gang. They were guardians. In the days that followed, Redstone Ridge transformed. FBI agents arrived quietly, sweeping up cartel safehouses and seizing caches based on the intel Rowan and Raphael had gathered. Diaz, the agent Rowan had worked with, gave her a thin smile and a quiet thanks. "Unofficially," Diaz said, "you did what 5 jurisdictions couldn't." "Unofficially," Rowan replied, "I'm not done." She wasn't interested in medals or headlines. She wanted sustainability. And for the first time, the town agreed. Rowan was offered the position of Town Security Coordinator, a formal title with informal power. She could have declined. But instead, she accepted with one condition: the Vanguards remain independent. They were watchers on the road, eyes on the horizon. One evening, Rowan returned to the canyon alone. She walked the scorched earth, boots crunching on charred gravel. Her leather jacket still bore the tear from El Fuego's knife. Smoke no longer lingered, but the ghosts did. She knelt at a broken rock where the explosion had thrown her. There, in the dust, she left a patched iron Vanguards emblem. "For those who stood," she whispered. The wind took her words and carried them across the gorge. The next day, bikers began arriving from nearby towns. Rumors had spread of what Rowan had done. Of how Redstone Ridge stood defiant. How a lone soldier turned drifter led a town to fight back. Some came to join. Some came to learn. Others came just to say, "Thank you." The Vanguards grew. Not in violence, but in purpose. A network of veterans, civilians, and rebels who refused to surrender their homes to fear. Rowan became a symbol, not of rage, but of resilience. Months passed. The roads calmed. Redstone Ridge reopened its gas stations, its cafes, even the old biker garage. New paint covered the bullet holes. Neon signs flickered back to life. But at the edge of town, a checkpoint remained. 2 riders stood watch. One always carried a rifle across his back. The other wore a vest with a silver-edged patch. Iron Vanguards. And on some nights, Rowan herself patrolled. Helmet on. Jacket zipped. Riding toward the horizon, scanning for threats. Not because she feared what lay ahead, but because she'd lived what lay behind. Epilogue. Some stories are whispered. Others are sung. But this one roared across the asphalt like thunder on wheels. They called her a ghost. A warrior. A woman with fire in her blood and a nation on her shoulders. But Rowan Carter never asked for legend. She only asked for peace. And when peace was threatened, she became the storm.